And we're back. Well, it's definitely, not immediately after Groundhog Day. Uh, but regardless, I am keeping a promise to myself that I will record a video once a year. So we'll keep it to that standard right now. So here we are. I am in my backyard in bright and sunny South Carolina. And today we are going to talk about another coal mining disaster. What started as a fire in a structure above a coal mine resulted in the suffocation of 108 coal miners in the mine below. Hi, I'm your host, as you know, Detective Trogdor, and today we descend into the depths of the Avondale Mine to figure out just exactly what went wrong. So when I was prepping this data, and every other time I've done a coal mining disaster, it seems to me that every single time this always states that this is the worst coal mining disaster in history. And I really have no clue what the metric is for worst coal mining disaster, but this one was alleged as one of the worst coal mining disasters because 108 people died. Sometimes it's a matter of like the loss of the mine or it's a number of people that died. I have no clue, but they keep saying this is the worst coal mining disaster. But I digress. But before I give you all the nitty-gritties and, you get to bear the fruit of my labor on doing all this research, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button so I can actually feel like I'm making this video for more than myself. Give a like. That'll also help promote this video, as well as if you can just leave a comment below, kind of give me an idea of what you want to hear next, what we talk about. I already have a couple videos planned out, and I did that prep work months ago. But here we are now, and we're going to discuss this one, so back to the video. Now that you've hit that subscribe button, we're ready to learn about the Avondale Mine disaster. So before we go into the actual disaster itself, with every other disaster, we needed to give a little history about what led up to this, what was the purpose of this mine besides coal, so that we can get an understanding of its impact in the region, because these things aren't just usually not really like national issues. They're more local issues. Sometimes you go national depending on how bad it was, but anyway, so of all the mines we've done so far, I bet you think to yourself, eventually he's going to cover bituminous coal. Like it can't only be like anthracite. Like he's going to have to cover bituminous. No, I don't. We're going to do anthracite again today because that's what this mine was. Because Pennsylvania is chock full of anthracite, and that's why all of these are so significant. Is because not only did you lose people, but you also lost access to a coal that is very virtually rare and very sought after. Fucking bugs. This is what I get for recording outside. In the mid-1800s, in the Wyoming Valley in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, some guys, they opened up a mine. Some guys owned the land, and some other guys were like, hey, we could get some stuff out of there, make money off of it. And they have no significance to the story, but just know that it is in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania. The first shaft was dug down to the red ash vein, but they failed to do that the first time, so they actually had to dig a second one, and that one successfully made its way down to the anthracite vein that is was being mined on the day of the disaster. Yeah, I'm going to have to read this one right off my notes because there's no way I'm going to remember all these different names. Management was under the Steuben Coal Company as of January 1866, which merged with the Nanticoke Coal and Iron Company, who built a coal breaker directly above the mine in 1867. Now, that location is going to be important for further on in the story, so remember that the coal breaker was built immediately above the mine shaft. What is a coal breaker? Well, in short, after my very quick Google search on this one, so a coal breaker does exactly just that. It takes large chunks of coal that have been mined out and it breaks them down into a moderately uniform size so that they can be sorted out for impurities, such as like shale, any kind of other rock that might be mixed into the coal. They can get that stuff out, as well as it makes it a lot easier for transport because it's easier to ship a bunch of pieces that are, let's say, like the size of a kickball. They're all the same size, so they fit into a mine, or what's it called, a train car, a lot better. Versus you have boulders and then you have pebbles that are like it's easier to transport them when they all fit into the container together. Another thing that's important to note. So remember, this was the 1800s. So electricity was still coming of age. So this practice may seem archaic to us now, but it actually is pretty smart when you think about it, especially considering the time. So coal mines are notorious for having, like settling gases that are heavier than air. They'll go down to the lowest point and they'll suffocate your people. So what they would do to draw fresh air in from above is they would have a fire started at the bottom of one of the shafts. So you'd have two shafts up and down. You'd have the one shaft would have a fire at the bottom of it. So when that thing was burning, the smoke and all the hot gases and combustion products would rise up because heat rises, and then on the other shaft it would draw air in because that fire has to draw air from somewhere to actually burn because it needs the oxygen within the air. So it actually creates a flowed cycle as opposed to having a fan in place, which uses electricity, which costs money, and industries love cutting corners wherever they can. That's why so many people die. Anyway, so they would have that fire at the bottom. They would burn up, get all the hot gases out, and then the other, fresh air would be drawn down. It's pretty smart for the time, but, in retrospect, pretty sketchy. Now, normally, when I say two shafts, I mean, two separated shafts. So in this case, you actually had one shaft that was divided down the middle. So for that, those hot gases to go up would go up one side, and the other side would draw the gases down. So that there wasn't any real division other than wood beams, plywood, everything that was actually keeping them separated. And this practice was pretty common, which should not come as no surprise. Yet again, I'm going to keep bashing on the 1800s like I have a vendetta against them for some reason. But this practice was pretty common back then, so it's not of a surprise to see that this kind of thing would happen.
I don't know where I was going with that sentence, but I'll just finish it right there.
So 2 years later, after the mine opened, the miners decided to strike against the Lackawanna Mining Company. I'm guessing for unfair practices or unfair wages because it is the 1800s. People were getting paid like shit. Yeah, fuck the 1800s. And they had the mine shut down for 7 days. So eventually management decided that enough's enough. They bartered a deal, and the strike was broken on September 6, 1969. Nice. And the workers returned to work that day. On the morning of the 6th, a fire broke out in the coal breaker, which was located immediately above the access shafts to the mine. This fire had actually started at the bottom of the shafts where I guess they call it the rebreather fire. I forget what it's called. Started and burned the timbers on the way up. So, understandably, there's a big issue because now your only entrance and exit is on fire. So as the fire burned, people attempted to put out the fire as best they could because in these mining towns, you pretty much lived within walking distance to where you worked. So when a fire would break out in a location like this, you could instantly see. If you, let's say that, that was your father, your husband, whatnot, working down in the mine, you could see that something was going wrong, and you immediately made your way over there. So people made their way to go try to put out the fire, but unfortunately, they weren't quick enough because the coal breaker eventually burned to the point where it collapsed in on itself and fell 327 feet down the shaft and clogged it up down there. Meanwhile, down below, miners... they obviously recognized the issue that was ongoing, and they made their way to the furthest part of the mine, so to go farthest away from the fire where the oxygen was being sucked out. And they tried to barricade themselves to kind of create a vacuum seal to stop all of their air from being stolen from them. Unfortunately for them, the fire was not extinguished in time. The oxygen was all used up in black damp, which is a fire decomposition product that they call down in the mine. So carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, a little bit of hydrogen cyanide, maybe some other fun gases that get mixed in there. Buster, hush. some other fun gases that get mixed in there that will suffocate a human if not poison them entirely if they somehow were to get back to oxygen. All 108 men were found down in the shaft dead. 1869 technology strikes again because the best way for them to test to see if it was suitable for a human to go down initially was they lowered a dog down on a rope to the bottom to see if the environment could support a living being. So as the dog was pushed down, people were claiming that they were hearing survivors calling out for them. This might have been true. This might have also just been hysteria from people witnessing an entire building collapse on the only exit or entrance to the mine that their loved ones are currently in. When the dog was brought back up alive, everyone was like, oh man, so there are people that could be alive down there. So the efforts to get down there were, pushed forward versus they're still treating this as a rescue versus a recovery. Meanwhile, while the fire was raging on, I don't know why this is so late in my notes, but I'm going to put this one down there anyway. So people were so distraught when they heard the news of what was going on, mostly because no one was just immediately going down into the mine that was on fire. The masses became just unruly. They became a full-blown riot. So the firefighters turned their hoses from the fire to spraying down people that were, trying to rush the rescue efforts. Which, I can't imagine that 1869 hose pressure was really high, but I guess it was enough to, quell the masses of people trying to get their way over there, which what were they going to do? Jump down the mine shaft? Anyway. So Charles Vartu, where did they put that spelling up there because I don't want to look like an idiot for not saying virtue. It's Vartu. Was the first person that was actually lowered down into the mine for the rescue effort. He was lowered down with a lantern, a wet rag, I'm guessing to wipe off his forehead, and a canteen full of coffee, which, the three essentials for everyone doing a rescue effort. So he only made it about halfway down the shaft before he was met with a large pump, was lodged in there. It doesn't state what this pump was for. I also did this research months ago, but the pump was blocking the way so he could proceed no further. So I'm going to have to read this one right off the notes again because there's a lot of names on this one. Well, kind of. So Charlie, Charles there, he suggested that when he was brought up that let's send two people down. They can work on dislodging that pump because the air is breathable. The air is not that hot. And once they get that pump dislodged, the next crew can immediately go down. The first two people that were lowered down were Charles Jones and Stephen Evans. I thought I was going to say more to that sentence, but that was it. So after working on clearing the pump and everything out of the way, they made their way down and they got to the bottom of the shaft and they reported seeing two dead mules, which at the time, mules were used to pull the mine carts along the tracks to get the coal from the distal regions of the mine to the bottom of the shaft for transportation out. They found these two dead mules, and at that point you would assume the worst. They also found a barricaded door at one end of the mine, which is presumably where all the other miners were. So they get to this door, and they're banging, waiting for some kind of response, but they're looking around the edges because it's not an airtight seal. It's the best that it can, but they can see sulfur gas kind of trickling out from the edges of it, and they're saying to themselves if there is someone alive in there, they're not long for this world, and we should probably not open that because then we will die and not be able to report back what's going on. So, understandably so, they kept the door closed, and they got their way out to go tell everyone what they found down below. Oh boy, my laptop is getting hot. It's sitting in direct sunlight. Whatever. So next up, after that, they sent down Thomas W. Williams and David Jones down to the pit to go do some work about trying to do some kind of recovery. They had picks and picks and shovels? Yep. They had picks and shovels lowered down to them, but after some time had passed and no one had heard from them, they understandably were like, okay, maybe something went wrong. So they sent two more people down. So they didn't name the two people that went down after, but upon discovering they found the body of Williams down there, Actually, sorry, they found both Williams and Jones down there, and they grabbed Williams and pulled him out, leaving Jones behind because, one. I'm not even going to argue. Like, carrying one person is kind of heavy. So they probably just made the decision, probably the closest person to them. They grabbed him, pulled him out to go do so, get him out and get him resuscitated. And we're coming back for Jones after the fact. Once they got Williams to the surface, they did old-timey CPR, whatever that might have entailed. But their efforts were all for naught. Williams had obviously suffered some sort of either toxic gas poisoning or just suffocation from non-breathable gases, and he was found dead, or he was pronounced dead at that point, which also indicated to everyone that the rescue effort might be over at this point. This might just be recovery at this point. There was the suspicion of the gases leaking out, that everyone would be dead, but everyone still had high hopes. But when you find an actual dead person in that vicinity, it's pretty much a sure thing that all the 108 miners that were in there were not coming out alive. So a third rescue team, and I'm reading this because yet again we got more names, was sent down, and at this time, Thomas L. Williams, not to be confused with the now deceased Thomas W. Williams, went down to retrieve the body of David Jones. Now, I don't know how heavy David Jones was because this rescue team went down to go get him, and they couldn't get him out. I wrote down my notes. Either David Jones was a load, Thomas L. was weak, or the gases were too strong, but they couldn't initially get Jones out. So another recovery team was sent. So John W., in all the documents, they don't tell me what the W means, but I'm just going to assume it's Williams at this point because of the number of Williams that we've had on hand. And Isaac Thomas went down to get the body out, and yet again, we're not able to get him out because the gases were becoming so inhospitable in the area. I don't know how the gases were increasing because the fire was out. Maybe the fire wasn't out, but it was just suppressed at this point. It was just smoldering. But the point being is that the environment they were in, or the IDLH as they call it in the fire service, I'm certified now, did not promote an environment that would aid them in getting out. And they also didn't have, they pretty much just went down as they were. They didn't really have any old-timey breathing apparatus to help them out. So this was purely a hold your breath and go grab them kind of operation. So the next day, a steam-powered fan was brought in to pump fresh air down / pump these bad gases out to make the rescue effort a little quicker. But this is a day later, and after the number of people that have already died from the gases down there, number of donkeys that are dead from the gases down there, and the inability for people to work in that environment because it's just becoming so inhospitable, it was assumed at this point we were moving from rescue operation to strictly just recovery at this point. With all this fresh air and actual hard effort, it took 2 days with all the debris being removed and everything being carefully pulled out of the way. It took 2 more days until the first body of the trapped miners was actually located. The victims were found in all different states of posture, hanging out. Not hanging out. It's not really hanging out, considering the circumstance. But anyway, they were found in all different kind of positions, I guess, for lack of better words. We had one man that looked like he fell while he was running. One man was kneeling, probably in some kind of prayer, saying his last rites. A father and son were found, held hugging each other down there as they are undergoing their final moments together, which is a terrifying experience to consider. But I guess could have worse company. Could be a worse situation to be going alone. But these men were found in obvious states of panic as they were trapped down there, slowly suffocating to death as the fire raged on. So all 108 bodies were documented in the order that they were pulled out of the mine. And if you really want to know all 108 of them, you can look online because this is 2024. And if you don't know how Google works yet, I'm so sorry for you, but you really need to learn how to type things into a search bar and go from there. But you can do that yourself. This sentence is so boring that I'm not going to bother to remember it. So here we go. In the wake of this tragedy, labor reform was further pushed, and in 1870, Pennsylvania state legislature pushed the anthracite mine ventilation law, which applied to the entire region, vice the county laws that were often implemented and then ignored. So, in short, they actually wanted things to actually be put in place, say that you had to do this, not like it was an option if you could actually have a safe mine or whatnot. So this law forbade the use of a single mine shaft for your airways, i.e. can't have one that's just divided in two for air to be cycled in and out. You also must ensure that there are ways to quarantine areas that have, let's say, like toxic gases being brought in. If one half of the mine is, I don't know, just has a bunch of so let's say had like a massive fire. So there's a bunch of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, not hydrogen sulfide, that's sewer gas. Anyway, had a bunch of different bad things down there. You could at least quarantine half the mine so that the other half could escape in the meantime, versus having the entire area be doomed to suffocation. But like those county regulations I stated, the Pennsylvania state regulations were often ignored for years to come, because the thirst for that sweet anthracite was yet to be quelled, and no pesky laws or regulations were going to step in their way of progress. So instead, they just kept pushing the way they were until someone gave them a fine. I wrote this in here. I don't know how I'm gonna I don't even know what I was thinking. At the time I was working 911, and in the quiet moments I was doing my research, and I remember distinctly not really doing much research into this, but I wrote, I would be wrong for not mentioning the Molly Maguires at this point in the story, considering it's pretty much over. Though there is no direct correlation between them and this disaster, it is heavily implied that this tragedy pushed for the fervor for reform, and for the Molly Maguires to take up arms and send angry notes to mine owners. That was a big thing they would do. They would send threatening notes to mine owners saying, you need to make your things a lot safer for our boys down there. And the mine owners would go, okay, or we'll just stick the feds on you. That works too. There's a whole thing about the Molly Maguires. Though there's no direct evidence of their acts of terrorism/revolution, the members of this secret organization were, spoiler alert, hung at the gallows in Mauch Chunk. I'm just going to put it up here, and if you want to try to pronounce it, it's up to you. Mauch Chunk, which is today's Jim Thorpe prison from 1877 to 1878. So I tried researching Molly Maguires. It bored the piss out of me. They're pretty much just a bunch of, Irish immigrants that the Molly Maguires started in Ireland, and then it kind of drafted its way over here for labor reforms and whatnot. But, oh boy, that's a slow topic. No one even wants to watch this shit, and you want me to do about that? Whew, get off. Well, that's enough, tragedy for today. I have things that I have to do besides sweat in the South Carolina pre-summer summer. If you didn't find the death of 110 people interesting whatsoever, I don't know why you even come to this channel at this point, because it's pretty much almost all the topics I go over are just disasters, death, some fun facts about Pennsylvania, and occasionally stuff about ducks. But if you liked how I presented it, I would much appreciate it if you gave a like on the video, left a comment, tell me what your favorite type of coal is, your favorite use of coal. Yeah, I guess your favorite type of coal. Whatever. Just leave a comment down below. Tell me what I'm wrong about. Tell me how terrible this lighting is, because I decided to just use the sun for the first time, which I don't know how it's going to turn out until I'm editing this video. And if you really want to be helpful, you could subscribe to this channel, so in a year when I do another video and I have the Knox Mine disaster, I think, is coming up, just hit that subscribe button down there, and tell your friends, because I don't have many. Well, with that being said, okay, bye.